This is the Knilly and Pb Podcast. In this weekly series, we're reading Twilight because I've never read it, and PB wants to send memes. I'm Knilly.
I'm PB.
We're here to talk about chapters 1 through 3 of Twilight, the first book of the series that is not necessarily called Twilight, apparently.
It's
PB,
the Twilight Saga.
Sure. How are you today, PB?
I'm doing great, actually. Today's been a good day.
Phenomenal.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm very happy that we finally are doing this because, and we've talked about this offline, but like the amount of effort it has taken us to not just talk about our feelings and save it all for today, our first episode of the podcast it was so hard.
Yeah. Like, I asked Nelly, like, hey, have you started reading? And Nelly said, yeah, I read the first chapter. And it's like, but I have to stop myself there. Otherwise, I will start talking about it. And I'm just like, respect. I still hadn't read it at that point when you said that. I think I read it the next day or the day afterwards because I was like, oh, Nelly's already started. I should start.
I mean, it was an easy read. As a reminder for the audience, it's a young adult novel, so it's not like we're breaking any literary boundaries here.
Yeah.
But it's such a core aspect of PB's teenagerdom and not part of mine. So yeah, that is we're kind of going off of that and I'm trying to, get with hype. We talked a lot about some stuff in our episode 0, which we haven't aired yet. We will air that at a later date just for a little bit of insight, but we talked about a lot of stuff about like some expectations and stuff like that and what we want to get out of it, and some predictions, which I forget some of them, but we'll talk about them as we go through.
Yeah.
Actually, this is a great segue. One of my predictions that I do remember is where the hell in America this takes place, and I was very much wrong.
Yup.
I said like the Midwest or something like that. But silly me, vampires don't like the sun. Of course it takes place in gloomy ass Washington State.
Where the sun only comes out a couple of days a year.
And it rains all the time.
Yup.
I just find this hilarious because the amount of times that there's like a couple of things here that are very Washington centric. And for those that don't know, my partner has lived in Washington State for a good number of years before moving to New York. He's more of a New Yorker now because he's been in New York longer than he's been in Washington. But like the amount of things that he would tell me from him growing up in Washington, and just hearing the sheer amount of rain that happens and cloudiness, I'm like, my guy, you sound like you're from London. But I guess it's a universal experience of Washington State. I haven't been there myself, so.
It's honestly, there's a few things that I remember so vividly, and so does the entire fandom, whether you've watched the movies or only read the books or both. It's the way that the entire movie has a filter over it, to signify this kind of like gloomy. Specifically, Stephanie Meyer, the author, wrote about it when they were describing the thing. I don't think I wrote down exact. Oh, it's and the director really went with this line. When I read this, I was like, oh, I see where this came from. The line is, even the air filtered down greenly through the leaves. And the entire first movie has a filter over it that is this like cyan, which is unbelievably iconic for the first movie that everyone memes upon and does in their video, in like their photo edits and stuff like that. So when I read that, I was just like, oh, this is the line that did everything for the movie. But what are your impressions? Like just a quick little impression of the first 3 chapters.
The first 3 chapters. I mean, it's set up, and I think we're gonna talk about I think this is gonna be the main theme of today. Sorry, I'm like fixing my monitor at the same time. The main theme of today is probably gonna be like, oh my freaking god, high school, because holy shit. Oh, I forgot I needed dolphin bleeps for today. It's okay. My god, so I went to a small school. I actually went to a very similarly sized school as Bella. Like no more than like 400 or 500 kids. Like you were in like a small town. It's not that my town was not nearly as small as Forks, but like because I went to such like a constant like it's so concentrated. I went to private school too, so like I knew also a lot of these kids from my elementary like school, which is also a private school. A lot of us just transitioned to that high school because it's the only private high school in our county. So like I knew a lot of these kids growing up, and just the idea of the small town, everyone knows you, your parents know each other. And I'm not from a small county or small town, and mine was actually a rather populous area right above New York City. So the idea that I have a very similar vibe to this like high school where everyone knows you or at least knows your face is so relatable. And the way I just like reverted to like 16-year-old me, like
It's very funny because it's one of my very first notes. Exact opposite for me. I come from a school that's larger than Bella's. I graduated with 1,200 people. And so you can just do the math with how big my high school was with that, where you just knew, you knew people from everywhere, but like not nearly to the scale if I went to like a small school. But in that same way, my college is about the same size of Forks High School. Though a little bit larger because it is college.
Mm-hmm.
And so going from that transition from this huge school in Texas where it's sunny all the time to Knilly's predicted Midwest college where it's super small and it rained all the time, and like unironically the light was different there. Like the way the world looked was a little bit more green, a little bit more blue, just because it was always raining, always overcast, and just like the green of the leaves was a little bit different from the native species there. And so when I read that, I was like, oh, I relate wholeheartedly to you, Bella, from being like, oh, I would have been pissed if I would have gone from my school to a little tiny in the middle of nowhere school where everything was gloomy as hell.
Yeah.
Heck.
It's just yeah, like I like it's great that also that we have that interest, like you have that experience of moving from big to small, and I have like the small to my college wasn't actually that much bigger, but it's bigger because it's a college, right? But it's still like a smaller community, so I didn't really have like that big like shell shock of like a larger community aside from just the college shock. So yeah, but it's just so funny that it aligns that way. Such a universal kind of feeling of change,
Yeah. And it was, so for me, it was just to go over my own quick summary or my quick like impressions of this. I'm going into this, this is my second time, or this is going to be my second time reading the series. Although I have read all the books already, I've watched all the movies, and I participated in very many forums back in the day. So I know a little too much about Twilight. So, and I follow so many people on TikTok who talk about Twilight nowadays. So going into this second read, I have certain things like I'm trying to clock that I did not catch when I was 14 in 2000 and whatever, when these books were coming out. So for me, going into this, the things that I'm laser pointed in are the parents, because when you're a kid, you hate parents. You're just like, my parents are so mean. They're like never letting me do anything I want. They're so protective, blah, blah, blah. I'm an only child, so that was even a bigger issue for me. So like when it comes to parents, it's like all very blasé, like, yeah, anything they do is going to be annoying. And anything you get, any little ounce of independence you get as a kid, you're just like, oh, I'm such an adult now. And you think like, oh, they're so cool, they're such an adult now. But as from the lens of an adult, you read some of these things and you're just like, what the fuck? Sorry, what the heck? And so you go through and you check and so I had watched some of these critiques on TikTok about how Renee and Charlie acted, because some characterizations are a little bit different in more popular media of Charlie and Renee. So you kind of forget what it was like in the book. So I was really like zoned in on any time Charlie or Renee was mentioned. I was like, I'm critically reading these sections.
How are these parents parenting? And like, so I don't have like a first-hand experience. I have a pretty atomic family, pretty stable family. But so like, the thing is, like, a lot of my friends have similar situations of like divorced parents, new parents, and all that stuff. And so like, I guess I just find it really interesting that like, I think it's weirdly mature of Bella to go like, instead of as if I were in Bella's shoes and my mom was gonna be moving all over the place because of her new husband, but I didn't really care for where my dad lived, I would probably personally try starting to strike it out on my own. So it's honestly like, I was like pretty impressed with how mature she was. Like, I hate this, but I have a familiar base of operations essentially with Charlie. Which, like, again, like, as a teenager, I'd be like, yeah, parents suck. I don't want to be my parents. They don't let me do anything cool. This is my time to be on my own, blah, blah, blah. But then she's like, yeah, I just choose to move to rainy ass Washington State.
I just like reading back through it again. I read it more critically than I did the first time. And one of the first interactions that Bella and Renee have, Bella's response in her mind, because Bella's very much in her head, which is what makes the movies the way they are, is she says, how could I leave my loving mother to fend for herself? Of course she had Phil now, so bills would get paid. There would be food in the refrigerator, gas in her car, and someone to call when she got lost. But still. And so reading that, again, very blasé. It's like in the first like page or two of the book, so I didn't really think about it. But I read that again the second time, and I'm like, what do you mean? How could you leave your loving mother to fend for herself? Why is this a concern of yours, Bella? Renee, why is this a concern for her that you can't do this? And then this is further reinforced later in chapter 3, I think, with the emails where Renee is obviously very concerned, but then is like, hey, but like, do you know where that pink top is?
I know.
Do you know where I put it? And Bella's like, yeah, you were supposed to pick it up like 2 Fridays ago at the dry cleaners. I'm like, these are not concerns a child should have, Renee.
Renee? Like, I also read that. I don't think I highlighted it, but it did stand out to me being like, oh God, Bella, I'm sorry. Because I also know, I have friends that their parents are like that too. And it's unfortunate, but they're very independent people. And like, to some degree, like, I know like you and I, we both have immigrant parents. They rely on us to be the bridge to being American. And while it's a slightly different situation, I can empathize with like the parents depending on you. Not to the degree that like apparently Bella has to apparently be the breadwinner of the house.
Yeah. It's like Bella is the parent in that situation where she's the one concerned about every aspect. Because like the nice thing about, at least with my parents, is that while they do rely on me on a lot of translation things, and it's kind of like being the secretary of the household. They are still more concerned about my well-being and things like that. And never tried to burden me with, these more adult problems.
For sure.
As opposed to fucking Bella, who, like, a lot of Renee hate here. Let's hate on Charlie for a little bit. Imagine your dad is the chief of police of Forks freaking Washington and not leading you to your school before going to work. He left before, like, what's happening in Forks, Washington?
That's so important.
So high that you can't take 30 minutes off in the beginning of your workday to go lead your daughter
to school.
Which is apparently just down the freaking highway. Go down the highway, it's right there. Like, just even if you just be like, okay, I'm gonna drive you to the exit, and then you get off, and then like I'll U-turn and go back to work or whatever.
Yeah, like
I was just like, Charlie, hello.
I mean, like, No, like I feel that with Charlie. The thing is, like, it seems Bella so far is happy, at least with their living situation, where it's like, okay, Charlie does his thing, I do my thing, and it's kind of like having a place to myself. And like, I kind of really would enjoy that if that was my situation, where it's like, yeah, my dad's my dad, I don't see him often, or like, it's a roommate situation at that point, you know?
Yeah.
And I think in the end it'll be it's so far it seems like a good situation for Bella, even if she's in like a, you know, like out of tiny ass town.
But it's also like very bizarre the things Charlie does and does not do. Because Charlie,
the snow thing.
Yeah, because Charlie buys her a car,
right?
Gets a computer, adds internet access to the house, and then also does that very nice thing about the chains on the wheels.
Yeah.
But did not stock the kitchen before his daughter came.
Yep.
Now, like, you could see that as like, oh, you know, so she can go get the things that she enjoys and make the food that she wants. But like, to just not have anything in the kitchen when your daughter is coming over, like, I don't care if you can't cook, you pretend, you know, fake it till you make it, Charlie.
Yeah.
You've been doing that all your life, apparently. So,
oh my god,
I was just like, how do you prepare all these other things but not stock the kitchen? So that was my check mark 2 on bad Charlie.
Bad Charlie, yeah. At least he left some money though. Not making.
Yeah.
At least he's providing the money to get the food.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, Bella's parents are incredibly meh.
Yep. Also, just some foreshadowing things here that I'll just mention for the future is where is the line? What did you say, Renee? Oh, Renee, you can come home whenever you want. I'll come right back as soon as you need me. And then Charlie talking about the Cullen family, that he likes the Cullen family because Carlisle is a good doctor.
Mm-hmm.
The kids are well behaved and polite, and they're a close family who go camping every other week. And he really enjoys that and does not like that people are so harsh on them because of that. And so, you know, let's just see if you keep that energy, Charlie.
Yeah. Let's see. We shall see.
So moving on.
We talked about that. I'm like going through some of my highlights. Oh yeah, here's this. Forks High School had a frightening total of only 357, now 58 students. My high school is only bigger than hers by like 50 kids. Like, it's kind of wild. And she came in, I forget, she came in as a junior, right? Like, because she can drive already, so she's like 16.
I can't remember if she's 17 or 18. I can't remember.
Yeah. There were more than 700 people in my junior class back home. So she's at least a junior, like this is at least second semester junior year, or she's starting junior year, or it's now her senior year. Yeah. Oh, she's 17? Okay.
Yeah.
I highlighted this line because damn, but I already look sallower, unhealthy. My skin could be pretty. It was very clear, almost translucent looking. Like, girl, you were in LA. Get some fucking sun. But apparently, is the albinoism thing actually like no meme? She wasn't like joking.
Yeah. I'm
like, damn.
They're really gonna fit in.
I knew my girl was white, but I didn't know she was white.
Nah, she's white. She's not Irish white. She's you can't see my veins through my skin white.
Bella. Wow. Because I read that line thinking it was just like, oh, okay, you're just like I got no sun while in LA, which I was like, I don't know if I believe that. And then I read the joke she made to her golden lab friend.
Oh, Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, Mike. But yeah. Before we completely move away from the parents thing, something that I have highlighted. She's in the house and she's like just, you know, taking in her new surroundings, and she sees pictures of like her dad and mom together. And the line I have highlighted is it was impossible being in this house not to realize that Charlie had never gotten over my mom. It made me uncomfortable.
Yep. That was so funny. I
Oh my
completely
God.
forgot about that.
Yeah.
As soon as I read that, I remembered, like, oh, right. I totally forgot about this. That was so funny.
So while it's not necessarily like a ding on Charlie, it's definitely like a little yellow flag.
Yeah, that's definitely like, Charlie,
Yeah.
buddy, it's been 16 years, get over it.
Did they separate immediately? Like, how do we know the backstory of like when they separated?
I believe it's mentioned in the first 3 chapters that Renee almost like after less than maybe a year, she left Forks with Bella. Escaped, I believe, is the word they used. Down to Phoenix. Actually, I think they moved around a bit, but I don't know if that's mentioned in the first 3.
Yeah. Yeah, I think. Well, no, wasn't it mentioned that her new, like, I don't know, they're not married yet. It's her boyfriend right now.
Yeah, Phil. Yeah.
Phil.
They're
Phil,
moving around
the minor
now.
league baseball player, right? That's that thing, right?
Yes. Yep. The not very good minor
Minor
league
league.
football baseball player.
I think he moved around a lot, and she had to keep traveling and not travel because Bella didn't want to travel or something like that, right?
I think it's just because he traveled a lot for
Games.
baseball, for games, and because that's not like, that's just going to a place, then coming back, going to a place, coming back, going to that's just not very conducive for somebody who's in school. Like they weren't settling in places like an army family would, or a military family. They would just get there and leave, leaving Bella effectively on her own. Although I really don't see how different that is now from her life with Charlie, at least as we're seeing it in the first 2 chapters.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's an odd one. But continuing on, what do you think, before we get to the colons, what do you think of the friends?
The friends, I think from a meta standpoint, like, this is your general archetype of friends that you have in a circle, but it's like that TikTok every friend group has. Like, it's exactly that, you know? You got your golden retriever friend, you got the extra clingy gal pal to some boy that she won't admit she has a crush on. You got like the guy, like the weird awkward love triangle crushing on the new girl, and that girl being in an awkward spot, which I weirdly relate to because that happened to me in college and it was very awkward. Like, oh no, when she admitted, like, this is weird, and I'm like, oh no.
Oh no, this is not just weird, it's relatable.
So I think like the friends seem fine. I'm still trying to be like, okay, who is Anna Kendrick playing? I don't think it's Jessica so far. That is my current vibe. But again, you do not have to reveal that to me, because when we potentially watch the movie, or like you can tell me when I get it right. Well, I guess don't tell me when I get it right, because now I know I'm getting it wrong. But you know, anyway.
No. I want you to imagine all these characters in your mind as you see them,
for sure,
before I tell you who is who.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's like a pretty standard like high school friend. I mean, it's a little more, and again, I say it's a pretty standard high school friend circle thing because again, I had a similar sized high school, so I totally get like Bella's perspective of like going on a few first days of school and being like, oh, I recognize the face, I don't know names, but now I can put names to people. I think by the time I'm like in my school, when I was a senior, aside from like the freshmen, like you knew everyone in the adjacent grades. I knew almost everyone's name at the very least, which is wild to me now that I think about it. Because like talking about people's like public school experiences, you could very much not know anybody, and it's that whole like, oh, you know that kid in like that class, or the one on the baseball. Like, you can't name someone, you have to describe someone. But I'm like, I could name people. She could have probably eventually started naming people, especially because she learns the Cullens names and all the like Cullen family's names before they're even introduced to her formally, like that, because they're an aspect of the life at the high school that's like, they're kind of weird.
Yeah, well, because I mean, you obviously went to a smaller school, so maybe this is a relatable anecdote. But the fact that they came in, they're the outsiders. They're people who moved to Fort Washington.
Yeah.
They all are like very aloof, very much like we don't care to get to know anybody here. And also they're absolutely gorgeous and they dress really, really nicely.
Yep.
In a designer clothing. And not only that, they have like which I think is very funny that this is the height of their height of Stephanie Meyer's height of like, this is the best looking car. A very nice Volvo.
Oh, I highlighted that one. Very nice Volvo. So good. I mean, Volvos are good cars for the like. They're but like Volvo, not like you could give them like a Porsche or like a Mustang.
Like, there's so many options, and we went with Volvo. I think that really speaks to just a lot of the inexperience with the world that Stephanie Meyer has, which I just thought was hilarious. Oh, talking about that, so just so everyone knows as we're going through this, Stephanie Meyer comes from Mormonism. Maybe he's still a Mormon. I'm not 100% sure. And so we start off this book with, or no, he didn't. We start off this book not only with like a little passage from Genesis.
Oh my god!
But later on, there's a line that I had to look up because I was just like, what does that mean? It is, he didn't know me from Eve, which basically means he didn't recognize me. And so I had to Google it because I didn't know what that meant. And I wasn't willing to look that over because Eve is a fairly like recognizable name from Christianity.
Yeah.
So I went to go look it up. And apparently the line or the phrase is, didn't know me from Adam. And it's the person who described it on the forum that was just like, oh, maybe they're trying to be cute because the saying is he didn't know me from Adam, and they were trying to be funny and said didn't know me from Eve. So I don't still know if that is like some sort of just like a gender twist there, or like a like, because she was referring to herself, so talking about Eve as opposed to Adam being a guy. But Adam and Eve there I thought was very funny, along with the apple of the cover of Twilight.
Literary symbolism. Whoa. Writing devices.
That's the other thing I'm keeping an eye out. I'm trying to keep an eye out for anything that is a little bit more religious that I wouldn't have caught when I was a kid, because I didn't really know what Mormonism was, and things that are just weird that I don't consider because that's probably due to Mormon culture, such as maybe a Volvo is the height of like expense in Mormon culture. Like, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. I guess speaking of I can't imagine. I guess it also is like with the car, like I guess going on the car thing, which is very funny. I love the truck that Bella receives, and I got a hand-me-down for like a sports utility vehicle, but it's like it's something that you would take off-roading, but I was using it to go around freaking suburban roads. But I totally feel like extra creaky, like door, and like it was mine wasn't not nearly in as bad a condition as like Bella described for her car, but like it definitely had the same vibe of like the car may not necessarily have matched the person, because like I went to a private school, and so like while I did relate to the thing you mentioned about like, oh, people having like really nice clothes and stuff like that, my private school is also predominantly like rich white folks, and so like it like that was like kind of common, and like there's definitely like in retrospect looking back there was definitely a split of like you can see who had money, who didn't, and also based on where people had their homes and stuff, and then you could also see it in their cars and what cars they would get. So very much like the parking lots that have different cars and stuff like that. Like me and my friends were like rolling in on like hand-me-down SUVs, or like I think one of my friends got like the superlative in the yearbook of most likely to break down on Route 304, which is like the road leading up to the school. Like, Oh, the fact that I almost got it though, I'm like, excuse me, my Montero is pretty good. But I had a Mitsubishi Montero in high school, and it was a phenomenal car, and I loved it so much. But I totally felt that like I was. If you think I'm short, I was even smaller in high school. I'm 5'1" now, so I very tiny girl jumping into. I had to use the step up to get to my car.
What is the thing? I also wanted to mention some of the relics of the past. So this book was written sometime in the mid 2000s, right? Like it released in 2007, 2008, or I think 2006 actually this released. So it was written in the early 2000s. So one of the things
2005.
2005. It released in 2005?
Yeah, the book.
Oh yeah, so then this was definitely written in 2000. Oh my god. So some of the relics of the past is I mentioned that Charlie didn't lead her to her school. She instead just drove until she found the school. And when I read that,
I could not relate.
Just like, what? What do you mean? And it just really reminded me of times when like my parents would tell me to pull out the map on the side of the car. And like try and figure out like where we were and how to get to a certain place. My parents at my young age of like 8 or 7, thought that I could, navigate a map is beyond me, but they wanted me to. And the way that I remember in I think like 4th or 5th grade, we had to buy a map from like the corner store that was laminated so we could draw on it with dry erase marker. So they could teach us how to read a map for the future, because that was seen as something that was necessary to exist. And now we have things like Google Maps.
Right.
So that immediately I was just like, I pinged like, what? And then the other one is when Bella is describing her room
With the computer.
and with the computer, that the phone line was stapled going to the modem so you can get on the internet for her computer. And I was just like, God, imagine.
Oh my god.
Imagine the world we used to live in.
Which is wild because yeah, I had like the wires like stapled all over the wall to get to my computer. I don't think I was on dial-up that long because my dad was an early adopter of a lot of tech because of the way he worked. Yeah. So like I kind of like my dad was getting like, we got like the first cable, like when cable modems were coming out, he like jumped on that instead of using dial-up and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, just like the computer and the way that she describes like even the school and walking from like throughout the grounds, like just feels like, oh god. What sucks is that because like I've already experienced high school, I'm reading this and I'm only seeing her walk through my high school, and I hate that.
Amazing. See, this is where the part where unrelatable. My school was enormous, so nothing she says, I'm just like I guess I can kind of imagine going through the car park and like going in between buildings, but like my school was just one giant building. And like my 9th, because this is how big my district is, we had a 9-10 campus, and then we had an 11-12 campus, and then and the classes became too large, so they added an extension to the 11-12 campus, so it became the 10, 11, and 12, so the 9th graders can all fit in that one 9-10 school, because that was such an old school. It was built in the 60s, and there was no place to expand over there, so they had to expand where the new school was.
Jeez.
And in that school we had 2 different buildings from like the extension, and it was covered, it had a covered like walkway that was outdoors that you pass like the car park. So that's what I imagine when I think of them, like when they were doing the snowball fight, of them walking through there. But aside from that, I have no context as to how it looks. So I think that's hilarious.
I can't even imagine. Oh my gosh. So like getting into the high school stuff, man, there's like a couple of instances. I just want to like cover this really quick. We don't have to harp on it too long,
Yeah.
but like one thing I want to mention real quick is like Bella is good in school. Like we realize she's good in school because she talks about how she read all these books already. She's like, oh, I wonder if I can get my essays so I don't have to do work again. And like, even if she's not like a grade A student, just the fact that she's thinking, can I recycle my essays is incredibly smart. So like she's like done. She's like, oh, I recognize the curriculum. I've done it. I want to do it. But like then she goes to that lab later on when we can talk about the Edward stuff after this. But like just like the teacher being like, oh, did Cullen answer all the questions? I'm like, you sexist son of a bitch. Do not discredit Bella. She even though she did this already, the fact that she could recognize, I was so mad for her. So mad. Like, it's like I would not have been as mad when I was younger. But like because I'm just like, oh yeah, I get it. But now I'm like, oh man,
it's so fun. So that didn't piss me off. What pissed me off was the next question of, or what made me angry was the next line. It's, were you in advanced placement in Phoenix? And I was just like, oh, so she couldn't figure this out quickly. She has to be in advanced placement. It doesn't matter that she was. It doesn't matter that she was in AP classes. But he said that, and I was like, so you're saying she's just not smart enough to pick this up right away? Okay, all right, sure. And then obviously there's the YA line of, it's a good thing you were put together then, when referring to Edward and Bella.
Oh my god.
And I was like, you are a smarmy SOB. Let me tell you that right now. But again, one of the things I wouldn't have even thought of. In fact, I probably had those moments in high school and I just didn't think about it.
Exactly. And it's just like reading it as an adult now, it's just like, fuck, man, that kind of shit really had an impact over time about how we like grew up. And then you like think about all of those instances or any kind of like moments like that, and you're like, geez. I think just also on that science thing, man, the way I also relived that biology thing on freaking cell phases, God.
So when I remember reading that, I still hadn't gone over that in biology class. That was, I think, the next year. I read these as a freshman. I think we covered them as a sophomore.
Please tell me you had like the Mean Girls moment of like, the limit does not exist, where you learned that from Mean Girls, but then you learned it from Twilight.
It's like, I wish I would have put more attention to what it meant, because they were just like, oh, it's this mode, and oh, it's this mode. They really didn't just go into description as to what that mode meant. But as I was doing the lab, I was just like, oh shit, I know all these words. I recognize these.
Not from a textbook, but from Stephenie Meyer's Twilight.
Yup. And so here's a question I had for you. Because I believe she mentions Wuthering Heights in this. And I wrote in my notes, I'm sure there are Wuthering Heights parallels, but I've never read the book, so I don't know if anything that's happening is going to parallel this. I'm assuming you have read it.
I actually haven't. I didn't finish reading it. It was one of because we did oh gosh, what's really funny is that these books exist on my Kindle, and I was just like, oh, these books are on my Kindle. We did Pride and Prejudice. It was Jane Eyre. Like Jane Eyre was the one we'd read instead of like Wuthering Heights. So granted, I have Wuthering Heights, so I might just like speed read that one weekend to see how many parallels we do get to bring out the literary meta and see. So I'm very curious. Because Wuthering Heights isn't even mentioned just that one time when she's listing off all the books. It's mentioned again because she's like, oh, I'm just gonna read it for fun. Like, so I'm like,
that's why I was just like, there has to be some sort of parallels happening here. For not to it mentioned once, but twice. That or Stephenie Meyer was forced to read this book.
Yeah.
And that's the only book she can think of. But she went through the effort to read prophase and trophase or whatever it is, you know? Like,
let me just pull this textbook off the shelf.
That was the other thing I was thinking, is that, man, writing a YA book taking place in high school where you mention school things must be a nightmare as an adult. Because you have to do research on the things you learn in those grades to be able to accurately mention it. Because I'm like, that is such a specific, like, either that really like stands out in Stephenie Meyer's head, or she had to ask some kids, like, hey, what are you learning in biology right now?
Right. Does she have kids?
No clue. Oh. I have no idea. She might. I just have no idea.
But keep talking.
Yeah. And so I was like, that must be a nightmare. But yeah, I saw the Wuthering Heights thing and I was like, that must be some sort of reference. There must be some parallels, but I don't know them. Haven't read them. If you guys have in chat, and you're following along with us, feel free to let us know.
Let us know.
Before Knilly speed reads Wuthering Heights, which I could never.
She is married to Christian Meyer. They married in 1994, and she has 3 children. So I wonder if I wonder like how old her kids were when Twilight came out, and maybe it's like, kids, what are you learning right now in school? One of those things.
Yeah.
1990.
How old is she?
She is currently 48. She was born in 73.
Oh.
So 94, and then the book came out in 2008. Even
Early
if she
20s?
had her kid right at marriage, they wouldn't be in high school. So
No.
So it definitely had to be a research thing.
That also places her in her early 20s.
Yeah,
when
which
she
is
wrote
very
these books.
that's kind of Mormon. That's like a Mormon said to like marry very early because of that whole like family values thing that they do.
Yeah.
So that tracks for what we know about her. And having 3 kids, I don't know how quickly she had her kids, but don't need to go into the biography of Stephanie Myers right now.
So continuing on with that, the thing that I found, I obviously want to hear all your thoughts on Edward Cullen within the first 3 chapters. But to start off, I just think it's very endearing that their first very real interaction that Bella and Edward had, Edward is making small talk and is so engaged in their first real interaction. And I think that's so funny now in context with understanding the rest of the book. And like there's a line that's like, he didn't understand and looked unnecessarily frustrated by that fact. I wrote Lamau after that in my notes. And also there was a line that's like, why does it matter to you? Edward, Bella asks like very angrily, and he mutters, that's a very good question. And I find you very difficult to read and also so funny in context.
Oh my god. We'll get on the Edward and Bella topic, right? Because it's like the whole beginning part is she's like the way. So for context, Edward, she stares at Edward during lunch period one day, and he stares back, and she gets freaked out because his eyes are like jet black. But also, they're all incredibly good looking, him and his family. I'm putting that in quotes because I understand the context of vampires, but like all the kids do not know at school right now. Like, that's my knowledge right now. Like, those are all motherfucking vampires. They are weird because they all look great because they have to pose like kids. Or at least like young adults. Anyway, so she's already freaked out, and the fact that she's like, oh my god, he's mad at me. What did I do? And like, she's always on edge and cringing. Man, the way I also related to that on like I feel like I did something to this person, and like going through like, I don't want to see this person because I did this thing to them that was never actually a big deal. But I totally felt that, and I'm just like, god damn. Why? Part of me is so glad I did not read this in high school. Because the way I could be incredible, like, and I mentioned this in our episode 0, but when I read books, I self-insert a lot because that's how I'm very like empathetic person. Like, I really like feel my feels especially if I'm just reading something. It's not like, I don't want to say it's trauma, but let's just say it as I'm like, I understand. I totally understand that feeling of like when you feel like you effed up. And you didn't actually really, and maybe it's not you, it's them.
When you said in our episode 0 that you were an empathetic reader, I was just like, I cannot wait now. I am so excited because this is a story told through Bella's eyes.
Yeah.
So and Bella, our protagonist, is a teenage girl. She's 17, and like you're going through the mind of a 17-year-old, and now knowing that that Stephanie Meyer was very young when she wrote these books, which were fan fiction to start with, self-insert character, it makes a lot of sense that she's so awkward and kind of cringy, but she's also very headstrong, which is something that you don't really see
I
in the
do
movies.
not relate to, but
yeah. But like the rest of it, I'm just like, when you said that, I'm like, oh, I cannot wait to see your reactions to these moments.
Oh my god. Oh man. So yeah, like the whole like and that whole conversation in the lab that they have, like I think that's in chapter 3 of like, first of all, Ed, buddy, coming on real strong, asking about all the life's questions, and I imagine that there's some other like otherworldly thing, because like my general understanding of Twilight is that it's kind of like a little bit fated, their meeting. I don't know for what exact reason. I just kind of know that it's not like I found a vampire boy and now I'm gonna date him. Like there's a reason that they are kind of almost forced together, and I won't say forced because like I know there's like other dynamics at play, but from my understanding, fate is involved. So like, oh, there's a lot of emotes. That's a lot of emotes. Thanks for the resub. I put a new emote thing and that like really scared me. I'm like, what is happening?
Yay!
Yay! So like I was just like the idea that like coming on strong, my guy, you're coming on real strong. Like adult me is like, you're coming on real strong. I think teenager me would have been very happy that anyone was interested in me. I know Bella does not feel that way because she's new and she's like, this is awkward, and she thought she made Edward mad for some reason. Do we ever call Edward Ed in the books?
No. Yes and no.
Okay, cool. Because as someone who would, my brother's name is Edward. And all my life he was never Ed, it was Edward, because my dad is Ed as well.
I see.
So he was Edward. However, now that he's an adult, his friends call him Ed, and it's very weird, but I've also started to call him Ed. Because he's an adult, and I should, this is a friend calling that. But so I'm like, that's why I'm like, yo, Ed, Eddie Cullen, Eddie C. chill, my guy.
Hey, yo,
You're
Eddie
coming
C,
in strong.
chill. You're
not gonna get any girls that way. Granted, you probably have this one hook, line, and sinker. We know how this book ends, kind of. I mean, I know the gist of how this book ends, not actually how it ends. But yeah, I think that's like, I would have been so awkward, but also very pleased if I was Bella. But the thing is, I also understand Bella because she was freaking out that she made him mad. And I also was as mad as Bella. Like, what the hell did she do? Like, she just looked at you funny. Oh, well, want to punch you. Oh, I wanted to punch him in the face.
And you say you're not headstrong?
Stupid, beautiful. Well, I say wanted to. Would I have ever acted on that? No. Capricorn says, I want to punch you in the face. Pisces says, no. I don't choose violence, even though I think it.
Oh my gosh. I'm obsessed with that. That's amazing. Because very similar emotions the first time I read through this, but now reading through it the second time, all I want to do is read Midnight Sun, because I know this scene is in Midnight Sun in Edward's perspective. So all I want to do is read it in first person because I've heard about it. And so I'm just like, I want to know what was going on in your mind during this scene.
Yeah. Oh my god.
No.
I was like double checking, but I realized I was gonna reread the same highlight that I was like looking at for my notes. Blah blah blah. Oh, okay. I guess we should move on, like get onto like the big scene, right? Like this is a great way to end these three chapters. The big car scene. Holy cow. Oh, actually, real quick before we get it, there was a line in here that I highlighted. I want to find it, and it is during that conversation or something. I believe I have heard that somewhere before. He agreed dryly. One of my friends from like my high school days, and he was like internet friend, and we would like we would like do a lot of forum role plays, and I think I believe he also said he read Twilight and was trying to convince me to read Twilight at the time, but I was like, no, I don't want to read that. But he's like, it's actually not as bad. The way that, like, oh my god, that son of a bitch modeled some of his characters off of Edward, and I'm just like, oh my fucking god, edgy lord shit. And I love it. So I just wanted to like get that in there. Oh my god, the effects from Twilight have been on my life, and I did not even fucking know it.
That's the other thing I'm so excited for, because there's so, like, it was a cultural touchstone, Twilight. So I'm very excited for you to realize how much
it impacted
of the world was impacted by Twilight.
Yeah.
But also, there was a line called that said wool gathering.
I had to look at that word.
Daydreaming, apparently.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, that is so just like not in my vocabulary, but there it is.
Yep.
And before that is this is another foreshadowing line that I just thought it was funny. I also have a note written next to it, but I can't talk about it yet. Is I find you very difficult to read. I thought that was really funny. Moving on, before we get into like the big scene, talking about the chains on Charlie's tires, or on Bella's tires. My throat suddenly felt tight. I wasn't used to being taken care of. And Charlie's unspoken concern caught me by surprise. Wasn't used to being taken care of by your
Renee!
parents, your mother? That's a +1 to Charlie.
Plus
but
like Charlie.
-12,000 to Renee.
Oh my god. The way that everyone was very giddy for snow and the snowball fights, also relatable for me. And the way we'd be so ready for school to close, or if it started snowing in the middle of the school day, you gotta be careful of them snowball fights, or just people being jerks and throwing snowballs at you when you were running to your bus or car.
Unrelatable to me. We've only had snow here a couple of times, especially when I was in high school. And the only time it snowed while I was in high school, by the time we left school, because my high school, again, all insular, we didn't walk anywhere. We only walked inside. When we walked outside at the end of the day, it was all mushy by the end, so there was no snow fights.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had a risk of being snowed in, and if there was that risk, they did send us home early. And so, like, gosh, being sent home, waiting for your bus to come when like schools were closing early was such a pain. Once I got my car, man, so happy to just be like, all right, I'm leaving, bye. Granted, I would give like friends rides, so but yeah. All right, are we ready to talk about the big scene?
Yes, let's talk about the big scene.
The big scene. So for context for everybody, the big scene that we're talking about here is on this snow day, right? Bella gets into school. She only realizes the chains later. Her dad put snow chains on her truck for her. Also because she's from LA, she's not freaking used to snow driving, which also relatable content because I had a friend from LA who moved to New York City.
Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix. Phoenix. I keep saying LA. I just think like West Coast, but anyway, from Phoenix. She's from Phoenix, barely any snow or no snow, right? It's a desert. They probably might get it like in weird freak moments, but I had a friend from LA who moved to the city, and we were driving to we were going to Boston, and we were taking his car, which first of all was a Kia, well, not a Kia, a Honda Fit, it looks like a freaking toy car. First of all,
yeah,
lime green. I'm like, Jesus, you're definitely cruising on like the California highways in this, but he's like, Knilly, or Caroline, I guess, you need to. If it starts snowing, because it might have like snowed or rained when we were on my way to, like, I might need you to drive because I have no idea how to drive in snow. And I'm like, the fact that like Bella was like, okay, I took it slow, but I guess, well, she's probably used to snow because she used to visit her dad, right? Like every now and then.
Yeah.
But the fact that she's like driving in it and it's like, oh, I did better because of these snow chains. I'm like, oh, that's so good that your dad did that, because even like as a new driver in like a snowy place with this car that's also new. Readers, it was not new. Was like, oh my gosh, I was just like, dang. So she gets to school, she's getting out of her car, people are pulling up, right? Not in her friend group, right? But like ancillary to, like, she knew his name. I forget the name of the kid. Skidded out essentially and was poised to hit Bella. Bella's standing right by her car. Edward Cullen is like 3 parking spots down or some shit like that. Like definitely not a close enough distance away. And this is where he does like this is a very strong point to be made. Then all of a sudden, Bella doesn't have great reflexes. She's not a very athletic kid. We learned this because she hates her gym class. And her gym class classmates also know that when she's not to be relied on athletically, which is fine. You can't be great at everything. I get it. However, to the rescue, Mr. Edward jumps in front of her, grabs this car, yeets it to the side, but then she it still kind of knocks into them, falls on the ground, like she bangs her head on the ground on her back, and that very like YA romance thing, Edward's on top of her being like, don't worry, I got you, and she's just like dazed and confused as to what's going on, but he's there protecting her. And then the kid in the car got the worst end of the deal, honestly, because he was jacked up when they got to the hospital, where we also get to meet Edward's dad. The whole point here is that Edward was telling Bella that, oh no, I was standing right next to you the whole time. And she's like, I don't think so, buddy. And then even the guy in the car, wasn't his name Timothy or something?
Tyler. His name is Tyler.
Some T name, I knew that. Okay. Tyler is just like, I'm so sorry, I was apologizing, I was gonna hit you. But like, yeah, I didn't realize Edward also had to go to the hospital. I didn't think he was there. It's like, yeah, no, he was standing right next to me. Asked to lie about it. The dad, and like her realizing that the dad was in it when she was trying to get released from the hospital early, because like, I'm fine. She wasn't as fine as she thought, but she's being that like strong teenager thing. Wow, what a scene, what a whole series of events. And I'm like, first of all, okay, Edward. Okay, you are a strong boy. Okay. Now, again, I know where the series ends up going. Had I been like, if I was a superpowered, like a superhuman as a vampire that had like all the speed and stuff like that, and I knew that girl, I probably would have helped too. But like, oh man, just to like, you know, everyone imagines the scene was like, I got you. And she's talking about like, I recognize the voice immediately, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh God, this is like weirdly romantic and I hate this. Because it's not romantic if you go in, like, again, I have context that like, yes, it's a love story. So like, they're gonna get together. But as a kid, you're like, if I didn't rate this, I'd be like, okay, this is weird.
I remember reading this and thinking this was really weird because I read these before the movies came out. And I had zero context of what Twilight was. I'd never heard of it before. Eclipse had just come out and I thought it was a really cool looking book. So I very angrily read the first two after realizing it was a series. And so I had no idea what to expect because let's see, what does the back says? It says, and third, I was unconditionally and irrevocably in love with him. So I guess I knew it was going to be a love story, but reading it, I was just like, that's what is this? What is happening right now? What is this weird thing? One of the things I'd like to point out is when Edward was like bracing Bella on the ground, waiting for the car to skid over or the van to skid over. Stephanie Meyer wrote that he muttered a low oath under his breath over Bella. And I was like, that's weird.
That's weird. That's so weird.
It's like, why would you say it that way? But I'm assuming oath has a more positive connotation, I guess.
Like, don't worry, I got you. Or like, I don't like, she doesn't specify what he says. I assumed it's more like, don't worry, or like, I'm here. I'm not gonna like leave. Whether or not that is more like a more mystical oath is yet to be seen, because again, I know he's a vampire, and there's some weird fated shit, but like that's how I took it to be when I first read it. It also did take me, I actually had to kind of as an adult I read a little faster, but I did have to go back and reread this whole like scene. I'm like, what happened? Because I was just as confused as Bella, which I think is partially like obviously as a function of like the writing, because Bella is just as confused as we are, the reader.
Yeah, because Stephanie Meyer also tries to frame it in maybe Bella was hurt and maybe she's just remembering things incorrectly. As opposed to just Edward gaslighting her. Although it is confirmed at the end of the chapter that like maybe Edward was lying and wasn't next to her. But even then, it's all like very wibbly wobbly, which is 100% on purpose. And I think it's very interesting. It's like, oh, I was standing right next to you, Bella. What do you mean?
What do you mean?
I also think it's very funny that all the kids that were there, because like you said, everyone knows everyone in such a small school. So when everyone was so concerned about the fact that Tyler almost or would have killed Bella in the situation, and B, that it said like get Tyler out of the van before they moved the van to try and see if Edward and Bella were okay. I just thought it was funny that Tyler almost killed Bella.
Yeah,
I was like,
wild.
Tyler almost killed Bella. Lol.
Lol. It's all like the whole also idea of almost everyone being at the hospital. Like, granted, like I don't think there was ever like instances like that per se when it came to like individuals at the school or like if something was happening. At least when it was just like individual drama, mostly because like our teachers wouldn't like let us go anywhere. But because like again, while it was like a tight-knit school and everyone knew each other, we weren't like as tight as like a small town vibe. Because we were still like a big community that, because like again, there's like 10 other public schools around us and we did compete with like the other public schools, so like it's just kind of like there. So I was like, that's weird that all of you would be let out. I couldn't go across the street to go get a freaking like drink that wasn't from the cafeteria. I had to stay in my freaking building because it was so strict. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that was wild. I have so like that whole scene happened. She meets the doctor who's like, oh, when she was asked to lie by Edward, realized that the dad is also kind of in on it, so that's a little weird. She's like, oh, that's weird, champ. So that was very funny to me. Again, also knowing the overarching idea, but I think it's just funny when, so like you make a new friend at high school or whatever, and it's kind of leans on that like, oh, I don't know, I have a crush trope, but like you don't want, it's not necessarily a crush, but like you don't want to like this person, but you end up hanging out with them, or you want to hang out with them more. I have highlighted here, it was after she called her mom talking about it's when after Charlie was like, hey, you should call your mom, and she's like, you didn't freaking tell her. So first of all, the fact that she knows the reaction, but there's a line here I have highlighted. I was consumed by the mystery Edward presented, and more than a little obsessed by Edward himself. Stupid, stupid, stupid. I wasn't as eager to escape Forks as I should be, as any normal, sane person would be. Jesus Christ. Like, the way I feel that about, like wanting to hang out with certain people, because I, like, back in time, like, when people had clout, you wanted to be with the cool kids. You wanted to be a cool kid. And, like, the fact that, like, Edward is so intriguing to her, but you don't want this to be the thing, especially because it was so awkward. I don't know. Yeah. I found it weirdly relatable, both as, like, going back in time to high school and kind of as an adult. Because, like, if you make new friends, you just want to, and you're like, oh my God, this person's so cool, I want to keep hanging out with them, blah, blah. Weirdly, like, it was just like, I don't think I have like much to say aside from that. I found these lines to be very poignant. And like, oh, okay, yeah, I relate.
I 100% agree, and I think that's kind of the crux of why Twilight became so popular, because those sentiments continue throughout the series. Little less in the end, which is why I think some people fell off. But in the beginning, Twilight, New Moon, and even Eclipse all have these moments of just Bella being such a relatable self-insert character that allows you with just such
no PB
about like, oh,
you glitched for like a hot second, so I didn't get a chunk of it.
It's so, I think that's why Twilight the saga is so popular, because there are moments where it is so poignant, these moments of just being able to self-insert yourself in these very global emotions, these global sentiments of just like, oh, they're cool, and I'm not as cool, and I kind of want to like, I'm being noticed by them, and that's not something that happens to me. In fact, I get noticed for all the wrong reasons, but I'm being noticed for the right reasons now.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Twilight as a whole was so popular, because it's a thing that carries over through most of the books. To round this out, I think that I think it's very important that the Cullen siblings look angry and not worried about Edward's safety. After that scene, there was also the one of the very last, I think either the last line or one of the last lines of chapter 3 is, "That was the first night I dreamed of Edward Cullen," which is going to be important here coming forward. And I wrote, "Enemies to friends to lovers are coming."
We love it, enemies to lovers. Well, I guess enemies to frienders first.
And
either
so
way,
my full thoughts of these first 3 chapters is, I forgot how angry they were at the beginning. I completely forgot how hostile they were in the first, I'm assuming for the first few chapters. I can't wait for Midnight Sun, because all these entire first 3 chapters, essentially, where Edward and Bella interact, is in Midnight Sun. We get to see his side of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And also, this is kind of calling myself out, but Bella in this reminds me almost uncannily to how authors write Becca in Pitch Perfect fan fiction. It is so unbelievably accurate. Like, the grumpy fish out of sea, clumsy, sarcastic energy is Becca Mitchell to a T in fan fictions. And I just think that is very, very funny. I was reading this and I'm like, what is this? Why is this familiar? This is like not the familiarity of me reading Twilight. This is something else. And now I was like, oh my God.
It's my fan fiction. Speaking of fan fiction, something that we also discussed a little bit, and this is also, I don't know how many of our listeners know this, but Twilight started off as a Hermione Draco fic, in theory.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, we're pretty sure, at least in theory. However, reading it, you see it. You definitely see it. Obviously, Draco Malfoy is not a vampire, but like the vibes, the like very angry vibes in the beginning, and also the whole like Hermione being smart, Bella is smart, but then also being put down by people who discredit how smart she is. I'm like, these are like some of the hints of that. If this is true, I can see it. Which I think is, yes, 50 Shades is a Twilight fic, but Twilight might have been a Hermione Draco fic. So,
it could have been.
It could have been. In theory, allegedly.
It's too hard to find information about early days Twilights nowadays, now that it's been over a decade since it came out.
Yeah.
Almost, we're closing in on 2 decades. So it's hard to find any accurate information because a lot of it's been kind of like scrubbed from old internet.
Yeah.
So all it is what I remember in my mind of what was going around in the forums back in the day. To call myself
I love
out
that you
even
were on
more.
forums for this. It's so good. Back to, speaking of early 2000s life. Back when you could scrub something still right intent. Dang. Any last minute, we got about like 5-ish minutes. Any last other questions that you want to ask me? I don't really have like much yet for you because we're not like, we don't have any deep like theory crafting stuff yet. We're really setting the scene in these first 3 chapters. But if you had any other thoughts for me as someone who has not read it yet, or chat, we're recording this podcast live on Twitch. If you have any questions for either of us, feel free to drop them in chat. But PB, if you have anything else that you wanted to touch on before we sign off.
We do have this thing that I hope we remember to do every episode, though I can't promise it, is we have our VIP and worst of the week.
Oh, that's
that
right.
we want to choose and why. So do you have any VIPs, Knilly? And do you have anybody who you would consider the worst of the week?
I don't want to use my worst of the week on Renee because I think that's kind of a given. I actually think my worst of the week when it comes to at least like Bella's more direct like orbit, I think is probably Golden Retriever Friend. I forget his name, Mike, because I would hate that. I would hate that so much. Like, please leave me. I understand I'm new. I appreciate your help. Cool. And also, while I do want to maybe use my VIP on Dad for purely the snow stuff. And I don't want to give it to Edward because he's a protagonist of our story. Because he literally saved our narrator.
Yeah.
I think probably my other VIP, like I don't want to give it to the obvious ones, is what I'm saying. So my VIP of a not obvious pick would probably actually be Jessica, because she's just being a good friend. Okay. Like she's informing Bella about what's the goings on. She's acting as a glue so she can meet new people and get her settled in, and kind of has a friend circle now.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. I would appreciate that as someone who, again, is in a new situation. Like, there were a lot of that I could pick out those people more so for me that were in college, because again, I knew a lot of my high school friends from elementary school already, so I didn't really have to meet anyone new. Like, not a ton, only a handful, but like,
yeah.
So I would probably actually give my VIP to Jessica.
Okay, all right, okay.
How about you, PB?
My VIP is Forks, Washington. Just because I think it's really, specifically the line, even the air filter down greenly through the leaves, because I adore that's the line that influenced the tint on the first movie. And my worst of the week is Tyler's van. Tyler's van is my worst of the week.
Tyler's van, boo! Tyler's van. I gotta get a boo soundtrack.
Boo. Let me tell you that Tyler's van was such a meme before memes were very popular. When on the forums when it first came out, it was very funny. Also, if you guys are in the Discord, I dropped a picture in the podcast chat. A picture of Edward's beloved Volvo that gets mentioned several more times throughout the books. That is the sexy car that is being talked about.
That exact model.
Same color.
That exact model.
That exact color. That exact color.
My ex had this car in blue. Talk about relatable content, am I right?
You're like on the relatability here. Small school.
Call me Bella. I forget her last name.
Bella Swan.
Bella Swan. Well, of course, if you Bella Swan, freaking white ass bird with her pale ass skin.
Oh my god, that's so fucking good. Yeah, I love this. I love this for you. I'm so glad you're reading this now as opposed to before.
Oh my god. Yeah, my ex. That was my ex's car, and he had it in like a navy electric blue.
So funny because I saw it. I know what your ex's car looks like now because I saw it when I was Googling this car. It was one of the first options.
Oh no.
Oh my gosh. I don't have any memes or TikTok reacts for the very first 3 chapters.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
We'll get there. Don't you worry. Do you have anything that you were just like, well, that's weird?
Not right now, because again, I think this is, as you know, reading this is with a literary lens. It's a lot of setting up, like a lot of like getting into the story, setting up the characters and the time and place. I don't really find anything too weird aside from the stuff that we talked about. Like, her family dynamic is a little bit awkward, how she had to take care of her mom and her dad's a little bit aloof. Hate that her dad's a cop, but you know, c'est la vie.
Literally right at the beginning of my notes, I wrote a cab. F you, Charlie.
I hate it. See, I can't even like, I'm giving him dad points, but I can't give him like people points because he's a cop.
Hey, Charlie.
Yeah. No, but I think I'm I don't want to say it's a slow start because it's the beginning. It's a young adult novel. These things tend to sometimes be a little bit more like again, explained and drawn out so that the reader, who is in theory the same age as the narrator in this instance, can relate like the whole biology class stuff, and like, I'm gonna go grocery shopping. I really enjoyed grocery shopping. Blah blah. It's the one thing that I can do that like that's exactly the same as home and stuff like that. No, however, the fact that she's cooking steaks. How much money fucking Charlie leaving for her? Damn, girl.
I read that. She like fucking wilded it out.
I know.
She said, "Oh, I can buy stuff for myself." In my head, I'm like, junk food, some chicken,
yeah, microwave dinner,
ground beef.
Yeah.
She came out here like, what ounce for these steaks, Bella? Because you bought 2 of them, one for you, one for Charlie, and then you made you made an entire meal and then tossed the salad at the end. I was just like, what? You had school today, Bella. You've already gone and you went shopping and you made this food?
The foresight just to like bake your potato while you're marinating so that you can cook your steak to take the potato out at the same time. I was never that put together as an adult. I had to remember to put the chicken out when my mom asked for it from the freezer.
Exactly. Like that was like the height of my worry when it came to making food. Also, to rewind to that scene, all Charlie did throughout that entire thing, I kept track. The only thing Charlie did was clean the table off. Well, after Bella had made the food, served the food, ate the food, she then went to go wash the dishes and clean the kitchen. All Charlie did was clean the table.
Yep.
Just so we all know. Also mention they tend to prefer to eat in front of the TV. So like, take that as you will. And how useful Charlie was after Bella just served him a fucking 5-star meal.
After
a $60 meal from fucking...
How many other meals are mentioned throughout the series?
That is I will say this. It is mentioned a lot that Bella cooks. I don't know how often they talk about food.
Because if this is kind of like, because I don't know if you've read I know you have at least mildly experienced Game of Thrones, but there's a lot of food in the books of Game of Thrones to the point where there's a Game of Thrones cookbook. Internet, is there a Twilight cookbook? Get back to me.
I can think of at least 2 meals that have been mentioned specifically.
Okay. I also imagine the Cullens are eating real good, so with their designer clothes and high-end cars like Volvos.
All right. I mean, we saw them outside of the grocery store. The entire clan. Yeah.
All right. I realize we don't have like an outro for this, but I think it's time for us to outro.
Oh, we didn't do that, huh?
No, we did not do that.
We didn't write it.
Work in progress. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to us talk about Twilight. We're gonna be reading. There is a cookbook, Callan. Okay, we will talk about that next time, and I'll look into it. But thank you all so much for listening, hanging out with us. If you want to read along with us, we're covering the next 3 chapters. So 4, 5, and 6 will be next week. We're going to be airing it live here on twitch.tv/KnillyLine at 7 p.m. EST. And you will be able to get the recording or the VOD. And if you're listening to that right now, you probably have it on a Friday or thereafter. You can find that on YouTube currently at bit.ly/Knilly Pb Pod is where you can find our YouTube channel. PB, where can everybody find you on the internet?
You can find me at twitch.tv/PbPlaysInside, streaming on random days, and you can also find me on Twitter at twitter.com/PbPlaysInside.
Amazing. You can find me at Twitter and Instagram as CLineAmb, CLINEAMB. That's my name. But you can also find me here on Twitch, this channel, twitch.tv/KnillyLine, where I also stream weekdays, typically. My schedule will be changing soon, so just come through and come hang out. Be sure to also check out the Discord so you can chat, ask us questions and stuff that we can cover in the upcoming podcast. That is at discord.knilly.live, Live. Head on over there so you can also get the inside scoop on episodes and all of that. And thanks for listening. Any last words, PB?
No, just remember to leave us some questions if you're reading along of things you want to hear us answer or our thoughts on.
And if you're listening to this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that bell. I get to say that. That's so weird.
Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you all next week.